The Lost Generation. People from the Lost Generation, who were born between 1883 and 1900, were greatly affected by the rough first few years of the 20th century. As teenagers, they went through social changes and disappointments that had never been seen before during World War I and the Roaring Twenties. Around the world, 20 million people died in World War I, and another 20 million were wounded. People born in the last 20 years of the 1800s were affected a lot. There were a lot of young people who served in the military and died in battle. After the war, a lot of people from the Lost Generation had a hard time finding meaning and purpose in their lives. They struggled with questions relating to their existence and turned to art and writing for comfort. Well-known writers like Ernest Hemingway and F. Scott Fitzgerald wrote about themes like disappointment, loneliness, and the search for identity that were very significant to this generation. The greatest generation, born between 1901 and 1927, the greatest generation proved to be a pillar of strength and resiliency in the face of extraordinary adversity. As kids during the Great Depression and as adults during World War II, they showed what it means to give, be determined, and work together. This generation's childhood was characterized by economic prosperity and technology developments, such as the radio and telephone. This success was very different from their later years, when the Great Depression hit after the stock market crash of 1929 and the economy was in chaos. The slump lasted for about 10 years and caused 25% of people to lose their jobs. But during World War II, when they fought to protect freedom and democracy from threats around the world, their strength really shone through. After facing the struggles brought on by war and a struggling economy, the veterans who returned home and their families rebuilt their communities and the economy. The Silent Generation. People in the Silent Generation were born between 1928 and 1945. They grew up during a time of big changes in society. This group of people came of age after World War II and in the early years of the Cold War. They tend to be careful and traditional in how they live their lives. The people of the Silent Generation lived through the rebuilding efforts after World War II and saw the United States and the Soviet Union become world leaders. People from this age are often called silent because they grew up in a time when kids were supposed to be seen but not heard. So they tended to follow social rules and standards, putting more value on safety and stability than questioning the status quo. People from the Silent Generation had a strong work ethic, were devoted to family values, and were strong when things went wrong. The Baby Boomers. The Baby Boomers are one of the biggest and most important generations in modern history. They were born between 1946 and 1964. Their name comes from the fact that there were a lot more babies born after World War II, when soldiers came home and started families. This generation reached adulthood during a time of social and cultural upheaval that had never been seen before. They lived through the Vietnam War, the Civil Rights Movement, and the counterculture movement of the 1960s. People often think of baby boomers as rebellious and active because they pushed for more social justice and equality and didn't follow the rules. Baby boomers lived in a time of economic growth after World War II. They had plenty of chances to get an education and move up in their careers. They had a big impact on consumer society and made music, fashion, and entertainment trends more well-known. Baby boomers are now old enough to retire, but their impact on politics, the economy, and society around the world is still felt. Generation X. Generation X, which includes people born between 1965 and 1980, came between the baby boomers and the millennials. Gen Xers formed their own set of traits and values as they grew up in a world that was constantly changing because of the economy and new technology. The name Generation X comes from generational theory from the early 1990s, when X stood for something unknown or the desire not to be defined. Gen X is sometimes called the forgotten generation. They are the smallest generation by population, with about 65 million people. This generation saw the rise of technology, like personal computers and the internet, which changed how they thought about the world and how they talked to each other. Gen Xers liked to do things on their own and valued having a good mix between work and personal life. Millennials. Millennials, those born between 1981 and 1996, are widely recognized as the first real digital natives, having grown up in a society increasingly dominated by technology and the internet. This generation grew up with significant improvements in communication and globalization, which shaped their ideas and beliefs. Millennials are optimistic, open-minded, and want to do work and have adventures that matter. They value having a balance between work and life and want their jobs to be flexible. Millennials are known for being able to change and bounce back from hard times. They grew up during a time of economic growth, but also saw the 9/11 attacks and the 2008 financial crisis. This generation also cares a lot about social problems and fights for things like mental health, climate change, and social justice. They use technology and social media to get their message across and make things better. Generation Z, born between 1997 and 2012, is the first generation to grow up entirely in the digital age. Gen Zers are known for being good at using apps, social media, and the internet. This has affected how they talk to each other and how they see the world. People from this generation are known for being open-minded, diverse, and socially active. They care deeply about making the world a better place and are very aware of social problems. Gen Zers want brands and people who share their beliefs to be real, and they are drawn to those who do. Growing up in the world after 9/11s and seeing how climate change affects people, Gen Z is worried about the future and is working hard to protect the environment. They are also more likely to try different ways to learn and build their careers, putting flexibility and imagination at the top of their list of priorities. Generation Alpha. Generation Alpha, which includes people born after 2013 and up, is the newest generation to take the world stage. As the children of Millennials and Gen Zers, they are growing up in a time of fast globalization and technology progress. Generation Alpha has been exposed to technology from birth, from artificial intelligence to virtual reality, which is shaping how they think and see the world. This generation should be the most technologically adept yet, with access to information and resources at their fingertips from an early age.